What's up, everyone? For those of you who don't know, the DC Universe streaming service just debuted its third exclusive series this past Friday, and that would be Doom Patrol. They were easily one of my favorite parts from the Titans live action series, so ever since I've been super excited to see their own show. Well, it's here, and I watched the pilot over the weekend on my iPhone and not my big screen TV. Why? Because apparently my 1-year-old controls the living room TV now. Dad life. Anyway, I watched it, so I'm going to give you guys my spoiler-free thoughts just like I did for the pilot episode of Titans. Off the bat, I will tell you guys I enjoyed this first episode a lot, actually. Like one would assume, it's an origin episode of how several of the characters got their powers. And even though it does this for Negative Man, Elasti-Woman, and Robot Man, the main focus of the episode is Cliff Steele, aka Robot Man, played by Brendan Fraser. His backstory definitely gets fleshed out the most. They depicted Cliff Steele prior to becoming Robot Man as a douchebag, but you ultimately still feel bad for him because of the tragedy that happened to him before he became Robot Man. I love when writers can make you sympathize for someone who was a jerk, as initially he's this horrible husband, but then they kind of show another side of him where he's regretted the stuff he's done, and you're like, oh, well, maybe he doesn't want to be this way. They just gave Cliff Steele, aka Robot Man's character, a lot of layers, which I was really impressed with. Being able to play with the audience's emotions is just good writing, because if you don't care or aren't invested, what's the point? As I mentioned earlier, they also gave us Negative Man and Elasti-Woman's origin in the episode as well. It was a lot more condensed, but it did the job nonetheless. Negative Man is played by Matt Bomer. He's pretty much verbatim ripped from the comics. They barely changed anything, so if you watched our History of Doom Patrol episode last week, you pretty much know what you're gonna get. Unlike Robot Man, whose origin was changed the most, but for the better, I thought. Then we have Elasti-Woman, played by April Bowlby. And yes, they changed her name from Elastigirl to Elasti-Woman. I assume this is to differentiate her from the Elastigirl from The Incredibles. Anyway, her origin was also very close to the comics with a handful of changes, but nothing super drastic. I will say though, what's up with Elasti-Woman's power in the show? Both in Titans and in this first episode, they show her as just this flesh, blobby, gross, silly putty-like thing that melts and turns all gross when she gets nervous, when she's supposed to have the power to shrink and grow and stretch her limbs. She's basically a hybrid of Ant-Man and Mr. Fantastic. My only guess is as the series progresses, she will ultimately learn how to control her power, because clearly, as of now, she's not in control unless her power is self-face melting. Actually, you know what? Her power as of now in the show is like ice cream from Marvel. You know the guy who has the power to melt himself into liquid ice cream? This is a way grosser, less delicious version of that. In any case, if you liked Robot Man, Negative Man, and Elasti-Woman in Titans, there's no reason why you wouldn't like them in this. Their dynamic and interaction with one another is great. But easily, my favorite aspect of the show is Brendan Fraser voicing Robot Man. I don't even care. I'm a big Brendan Fraser fan. I mean, you have Encino Man, The Mummy, Dudley Do-Right, and George of the Jungle, just to name a few. I'm a 90s kid. Come at me, bro. Another interesting aspect to this series is that the role of Chief has been recast. When Chief appeared in the Titans series a couple months ago, he was played by actor Bruno Pachir, who portrayed a darker version of the character. But now the role of Chief has been turned over to James Bond. I mean Timothy Dalton, who has lightened up the character quite a bit. And I gotta say, I like his version of the character better so far. We're also introduced to Crazy Jane, played by Diane Guerrero. I think she's gonna make for the team's main source of drama in the show, as she's constantly switching in and out of personalities, and if handled right, could make for some awesome character interaction. But as of now, I think it's too early to tell if that's gonna be the case. As for Cyborg, he hasn't showed up yet, but I'm super curious to see what they do with him, as he's a huge character in the DC Universe. We also get to see the villain for the season, Mr. Nobody, played by the awesome Alan Tudyk. He actually narrates the episode, and I love how weird and trippy his character is. He did a great job with him in this episode, so I can't wait to see more of him this season. As for the overall tone of the show, I'm digging it way more than the one they chose for Titans. It's very fun and weird, which is the only way I think you can make a show like this work and not come off super corny. With that said, this show is still super adult, like a hard R. There's nudity and tons of vulgar language. Which, whatever, I'm a grown man, I can watch whatever the heck I want, but it sucks for younger audiences, as I'm sure there's no way most parents are gonna let their 12-year-old watch this show. I know there's no way I would, so I just find it kinda weird that DC is going so adult with these DC Universe live action shows when you could still have adult themes and be mature with a PG-13 rating. It would also enable younger kids to watch, and purely as a business model, you would think DC and Warner Brothers would want these shows to be PG-13, because it would have given them a much broader potential audience, which of course would in turn mean more money. But that's just my 2 cents, as they clearly have a different agenda. In summary, I'm digging the show thus far, and I like all the characters and people playing them. It looks like it's going to do solid justice to its comic counterpart. I think the show is off to a way better start than Titans was, so let's hope it stays that way. But those are just my personal thoughts. What do you guys think of this pilot? Let us know down below. But as always, remember you could check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links for that is in the description below. But I'll see your lovely faces next time when I talk about all things comics.